We begin the current Daf, Masechta Nazir Daf Samach, begin 9 lines down at the top of the Yomid, where the Gemara continues to explain the halacha of our previous Mishnah, which we're going to shortly, quickly review, regarding when you have the situation, which we spoke about in the previous Daf, of when you have complications because of doubts. You have a Nazir that's maybe Tameh, maybe Mitzayra, and then therefore all the different cheshbonos you have to take into consideration regarding making sure that you're not violating anything at the same time going through your process of the ceremonies that each one of these might have in part. Today's Daf. Some discussing today's Daf are a Nazir that is a Mitzayra, that generally when he's a Mitzayra, he will do his taglachis during his Naziris, but that's only when it's definite. When it's suffix, you run into the problem. If you're not a Mitzayra, you can't be cutting your hair during Naziris, because that's one of the 3 violations. So then you have to cover your bases and wait the period of what your Naziris would be to then do what possibly you're obligated to do as a Mitzayra, and then it's going to take you out till 4 taglachis because of the concerns of maybe you are, maybe you're not. Also, the Gemara ultimately tells us what's called teglachas achas eino lekan lekan, which we've been saying all along that, okay, you got to do one haircut for the tzaras, and then for the second part of the tzaras, and then for the tama, and then for the tahar. Why can't you just do one haircut and just take care of all of them together, which people have asked in the past, that we'll see the Gemara says, no, that those haircuts for that one cannot work for that one. Even if you wait all that time period, it's not going to help. And teglachas mitzvah, the Gemara discusses, is it a mitzvah, or is it avuri sar de tumah, or is it just not to have the hair? In other words, do you need to have a mitzvah of taking a razor and cutting it off, or is it just that you're not supposed to have that here? So we begin the current Daf Samach, 9 lines down at the top of the Amid. The quick review, the Mishnah had said that if Nazir shayitami b'safik or muchel b'safik, so he was uncertain if he became tummy on the first day, and he's also unsure whether he is a mitzaycha. So the Mishnah said, so you have to wait 60 days until you're certainly purified, because Mechusi Kippurim, which is specifically, that Tais explains that Tumah Sheyetzela Megufa is called Mechusi Kippurim, is also Lecha B'Kachim. But he's like Kachim before bringing his karbanis of the Naziris, but regarding that of Tzaras, he wouldn't be able to. So he has to wait 60 days. But he has to wait 120 days until he's certainly completed his Naziris, because the taglachas, like the Mishnah said, of nega is deicha, taglachas and naz only when it's vade. But when it's suffix, like in this situation, it's not deicha, because, again, you might not be a mitzayra, and therefore you're not allowed to be doing haircuts during your naziris. So on that, the Gemara brought a brayse that says, oh, this was a naziris mo'etis that you wait 120 days, 60/120. But if naziris ba'ashana, if naziris is a year, then again, you always have to be concerned that you're doing a haircut during your time in Naziris, because you might not be a Mitzayra and that might not be Nazir Tameh. So you only eat kachim after 2 years. And again, and then we said you do 4 haircuts to fulfill all the possible obligations. He has to shave 4 times. And each teglachas must follow a Nazir's term. A Mitzayra is obligated to shave after the tzras is healed, and then again 7 days later. That's the first 2. So, and then the remaining 2, and that we went to in the Gemara to explain what are the actual karbanis that you bring. And now the Gemara goes through a little bit in detail, 9 lines down, Amrit, which Tais says that's like the words Amamar, like when the Gemara quotes something and it goes back to explain it. So we had mentioned Taglachas Rishayna. We had said the first haircut that Mevi V'chulu, that you bring tzipayrim. Why do you say you bring birds? Because, and this is what the Gemara is going to explain. Because if it's for sure mitzayra, so tziparan are is chayva, and he has to bring also the chata sa'oif. We said why? Because if he's not a mitzayra and he's tamei, he has to bring a chata sa'oif for his naziras tuma. And we had said va'ilas behema, because if he's not a mitzayra and not tamei, well then va'ilas behema is his obligation as naziras tahara. That's what the Gemara had just said in the previous lines before this on the brisa that explained our Mishnah. And that says the Gemara just to explain. Because either way you look at it, Shabbat Kamaisi, you're okay in the carbon department. Why? Because the Ivade Mitzayrahu, if you're a definite Mitzayra, and V'lav Tamehu, and you weren't Tameh, great. Tzipayrin Chayvasai, the birds, which is the first stage of your Mitzayra purification, is your obligation. V'chata Sa'if, and this Chata Sa'if that you're bringing is suffix. You're allowed to bring Achat ha'sa'if, even if you're not obligated when the situation of death. So like for that gets buried. V'oila, and this is you bring oilas behema, that's okay too, because have a nadava. That will be a nadava. You're allowed to bring oila as a nadava. And that's step number one. Now, ulagalcha, and the gear says b'seif shiva. Now to go ahead and to cut you here now a second time, if you are, let's say, mitzaycha, meaning for that possibility at the end of 7 days, which are within 30 days, okay, that efsha. That's not possible. Why not? Because the dilma lav mulchuhu. Maybe he's not a confirmed mitzaycha. Rachman Amar, the Torah says, again, the Gemara is just going through explaining the brisa. Ta'ar lo yaval reishad malais. You're not put a razor over your head until you finish your naziris. So you can't go ahead and do the second haircut 7 days later. Now, v'lav mitzaycha ba'adahu. Now, and if let's say he's not a definite mitzaycha, but hu tamei, and he's tamei, so great. Now, when it comes to the second haircut, so chata sa'if. This is actually going back to the first haircut. So chata sa'if, meaning in the first haircut, if you're not a mitzayra, I mean, we just said there's 3 possibilities for the first haircut. You either might be mitzayra ba'day, you might be not a mitzayra, and you might be tamei, or you might not be tamei, you might be nazir tar. One of these 3 possibilities are what the first haircut is for. Each one of these 3 departments needs a haircut. So if you're not a mitzayra, we just explained if you are a mitzayra, and that's okay. So the tziparim is for yichib, and the other 2 are for other things. But if, let's say, you're not a mitzayra, but tamei, and really he was a nazir that became tamei, so great. That's your obligation of your naziris of tamah. But tziparim and the birds that you're bringing, that's okay because avroi kumas avdin. They're being done on the outside. Meaning, it's not a violation of chul and azara because they're not even karbonis, these birds. The one is shechted, not in the base of Mikdash, and it's just dipped into the blood of the one that's sent away is dipped in that one, and that one's sent away, and okay. And for Eilis Beim having the dava. So that's okay, in case that's what really is happening, that's not a problem either. And option number 3, Vilab Mitzayru, and if he's not a Mitzayru, Vilab Tameh, and he's not Tameh either, great. That's not a problem either. The birds, again, they're being done outside, and therefore there's not a problem. Even if it turns out he's not really tamei, that's okay because that will be buried because we said when you have a suffix, you're allowed to bring a chatas ha'if, which we have a suffix, we're not sure if the guy became tamei. And oilas behema, that's the obligation. So again, any one of these 3 possibilities, which we're not sure which one he is, that's okay because the other 2 are not problems. No. Here we're waiting. We're waiting the 30 days. We're waiting. That was the halacha of our Mishnah of our Brisa, whether it be a year or 30 days, whatever the term of the Nazir says. We're going to wait that amount of time to do haircut number 1 and haircut number 2 and haircut number 3. We're going to have to wait. But the problem is, what do you do with the karbanis? You can't have chul ba'azara. You can't have. So that's what the Gemara has explained, that siparim are not a problem of chul ba'azara because they're done outside. Echata sa'if is also not a problem, the one in case you're in tamei, because that's allowed to be brought out a suffix. And others behem is also not a problem if you're not in Nazir Torah right now, because that's allowed to be in the dava. So all these 3 types of karbanis are okay, even if you're not obligated in it, and therefore, says the Gemara, we're safe. But then the Gemara says, okay, you took care of, and we explained already on the previous daf, on the top of this amid, about all the karbanis that we go through. But now the Gemara says, but what do you do with Vabai Asham? What do you do? In Nazir Tami, you only described 3 types of karbanis to me. You told me a tzipayrin, the birds, for the mitzayra. You told me the chata sa'if for the Nazir Tami part. And you told me oilas behema for the Nazir Tahar part. But what do you do with the fact that Nazir Tami has to bring also an Asham, a guilt offering? An Asham can't be brought b'teres nadava. You're stuck there. What are you going to do with the Asham? You're going to be bringing that? That's chul ba'azara. You can't bring in the dava of Asham. Says the Gemara, it's not difficult. So the Gemara says, Reb Shimon it's going like Reb Shimon, that he says, Maisi umasni, that you could bring an Asham and you could stipulate, as he says in Zvachim Dafayin Vav, and the last parak in Dafayin Menalev, that an Asham you could bring and stipulate should be like a shlamim. So even though you're minimizing the time of the shlamim and you're only going to eat it the amount of time as an Asham, he's like, okay, you can bring in the base absul. And therefore, it's not a problem. You'll bring it as nadava. If it's an asham, it'll be asham. If it's not, it'll be eaten as a shlamim. And the shlamim, you'll let it bring it as nadava. So therefore, that's not a problem either. Says the Gemara, going back to The second haircut, Teglacha Shniya Ushlishis, again, we had explained it in the context of the time of the violations of the hair cutting. The Brisa had then discussed it as regarding what karbanos do you bring. Our Gemara is now just explaining, what is the halachic complications of that. So the second and third haircut, Tzipayrin, regarding the living birds because of the Metzera Muchlit, because if he's a confirmed Metzera, that says the Gemara that the Brisa Leitzarch didn't require, because the Ovid, you already did that on the first haircut. So even if he was, you're already done with that. So Micah, what's left? The Mavade Muchlihu. Maybe he was a confirmed Metzera. Okay, so then Chada, so then one time, meaning by the second haircut, that Chata Sa'if is coming for the second haircut for L'Safik Sifrei. For the doubt of maybe this is the end of his Tsaras. Because we said there's two haircuts that the Metzora has to do. One right when he purifies himself, and then he's got to count 7 days and do Chata Sa'if. So first is birds. That's the first haircut. That's one process the Metzora does. He brings two birds, they're not karbanos. Then 7 days later, he brings an actual carbon called the Chata Sa'if. Metzora Ani. So even though Usher has to bring behemoths, but we said he's mafkar all his nachasim because this guy would be stuck if not. So then he brings a Chata Sa'if. So when you second haircut, you bring a Chata Sa'if, that is, Chata Sa'if is actually because of the Metzora part. The Chada, now one, meaning the haircut the third time that you bring a Chata Sa'if, that's l'savik tumasai. That's actually for his Nazir's tumah part. So although we mentioned this on the previous daf, although the second and the third haircut you bring a Chata Sa'if, they're for two different things. The second haircut is for the fact of maybe he's Metzora Vadai, which the second stage of that, after Yomei Safarai, he brings the Chata Sa'if. The third haircut that brings the Chata Sa'if is actually in case he's a Nazir Tameh. So that's what the Gemara is mentioning here. And Teglachas to the fourth haircut is maybe Karban Tara Masni. Then all you're left with, you already took care of all your options, you bring Karban Tara and you stipulate that, as we continue to Tamid Beis, V'i Vadei Nazirhu, if I was a definite Nazir, meaning I was not Tamei and I was not Mitzera. So the first oil I brought back 120 days before, 90 days before, so that was the Chayva. And now this that I'm bringing right now is in the Dava. But Vim Tamei or Muchlihu, if he was Tamei and Muchlit, which means to say all the karbanas till now and haircuts were for those other things of Tzaras and of Tumah, well, oil Rishon and Dava. That means the first oil I brought was on the Dava v'zu Chayva, and this oil is an obligation. V'zeh karban, and this I'm bringing my Chatas now, I'm bringing my Shlam now, I'm bringing the rest over here right now. That's the conclusion of the Brisa from the previous daf. But now the Gemara continues with the Brisa itself. The Brisa now brings different computations of these three variables. We had mentioned in our Mishnah a Nazir Vadai, Tamei Safik, Muchlit Safik. Now we're going to say, says the Brisa, what happens if it's Tamei Safik? This is like more the metrics, the numbers over here. If someone is not sure if he's Tamei, a Muchlit Vadai, but he knows for sure that he was a Mitzera. So here the numbers start changing a little bit. If you recall, in our Mishnah, we had said that he wasn't sure if he's a Mitzera, wasn't sure if he's Tamei. He said he has to wait 60 days to eat kachim. He's got to wait 120 days to be Mitamel HaMeisim and to drink wine. Here it's different numbers. Here you can eat kachim after 8 days, which, as Tosfos Amud Aleph explains, first of all, it doesn't mean after 8 days. It means on the 8th day. And although it says la'achar, it's lav dafka. Because day one of his naziris, he went and he cut his hair off for the fact that he was a confirmed mitzvah. Meaning, although he got the tzaras on day one, it went away right away. So he cuts his hair off, like any mitzvah who gets purified. He stays out of his oil 7 days. And on the 7th day, he cuts his hair. On the 8th day, he brings his carbon mitzvah. On that day, he's really allowed to eat kachim. Now, if he was definitely vadai, if he was definitely tamei, so what he would do was, he would count 7 days, he would spray himself day 3, day 7, and he would cut it here on day 7. The problem is, he's a suffix tumah. He was definitely a mitzvah, So therefore, he's allowed to eat kachim already 8 days in, because that's the only one that would mechutz kippur would hold you back. But what's the numbers over here that's taking you so far out? He's not sure if he's tummy. Maybe he's not tummy. Maybe he was a tahar, nazir tahar that was muchled as its mitzvah. So therefore, you can't go ahead now and cut your hair within 30 days because you might not be tummy. The Torah tells you tar lo yabal reisha ad malais. So what does he have to do? So he counts 30 days, and on the 8th day, meaning the first 8th day, is going to count towards those 30 days. Now, on day 31, he'll cut his hair, like all Nazirim that cut their hair on day 31, like we brought on Daf Yomi base. So it comes out on day 38, really, is the Gersum, because he started, his day 1 was really day 8, because he was a Metzera. The days of Tzaras don't count towards that. So on day 8 was day 1 of his counting 30 days. And then he's going to do his third haircut, which he's because maybe he's a Nazir Tameh, and the original days fell away, so he has to count another 30 days. And on day 31 is when he's going to cut his taglachas of Nazir Tar after that. So therefore, that's why the Gemara says, although he's able to eat kachim after 8 days, but v'shoyse yain mitam lamesim, he could only drink wine mitam lamesim la'achar shishim v'shiva yom, after 67 days, because that, which is really day 68, which, like Taisa explains, that's the rule that you can't go ahead and have your status of Naziris Tuma or Naziris Tara until you finish the days that you were a confirmed Mitzera. And however, but you're not considered Mechusi Kippurim to be forbidden to eat kachim only because of a Mitzera Muchlik, because the Tumah is coming out from his body. So we said that you're allowed to eat kachim after 8 days, and he's also allowed to shave during his naziris because he's Mitzera Vadai. So yeah, you could cut your hair day 1 and day 7. Those are the 2 haircuts that you're doing for your tzaras. You're allowed to do that during your days of naziris because you're a definite mitzera. The whole thing that we always said, you got to wait because we weren't sure. Here we know that you're a mitzera. But what? What about what? Shlishi and yeah, he's got to wait. Yeah, he could spray himself. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But he's going to have to wait another 30 days and then shave. We said, why do you have to wait 30 days? Meaning, really, what you would do is you would wait 3 and 7, and then you would cut your hair 7 days after the 8 days. But you can't do that because you might be a Nazir Tahar. So you got to wait 30 and 30, which is 60. So it comes out to be a total of 67 days, because the 8th day is really day number 1. So you wait 8 days. And from 8 days, that counting day number 8 is day number 1. You're going to count another 60 days, 30, because we don't know if you're Nazir Tam and Nazir Tar. You can't do it just in case. Then you'll do a haircut then, and that's going to be Hayam Hashem Yiplu in case you are a Nazir Tam. And another 30 days, so that's going to take you out to day 68, that then you're going to be able to be done with your Naziris. That's one case. Another case, says the Gemara, and again, these are just different variations, are Muchlet Safik. No, you're not sure if you were Metzera, but you were definitely Tameh. Okay, so what's the halach over here? You're allowed to eat kachim after 37 days, and you could be done with your naziris, which is the other 2 halachas of drinking wine and after 74 days. What's that cheshbon? So Taisis on the Min Aleph says, look, since he's not for sure a Metzera Muchlet, so he's not allowed to cut any haircut only after 7 days, meaning even the first haircut. Usually the first haircut you do right away. You had day number 1 of your Naziris, if let's say you knew for sure that you were like the previous case, and they went away right away. So you do the first haircut right away, and then you count 7 days and do the second haircut. Here you can't do any one haircut until after 7 days, meaning after you sprayed yourself day 3 and day 7, and then you could cut your hair on day number 7 because you know that you're tummy. So tummy allows you but you just don't know if you're also Mitzayra. But you can't do the Mitzayra right now because if you're not, you're violating the halacha of your Naziris, and you're not cut your hair Naziris. Now, even though Nazir Tamar cuts his hair, that's only after purifying himself, and only then he does. So the first haircut you're going to be allowed to do is only going to be after on day 7. And day number 8, you're going to bring your chatas ha'oif, like a Nazir Tameh, because he is a Nazir Tameh. Now, he's not allowed to do his second haircut until 30 days from day 7, because maybe he's not a mukhlat. So day number 8 will be day number 1 for the 30 days, and the girsa is on day 30 he'll cut his hair because maybe he is a mukhlat. So it comes out really, maybe those first 2 haircuts are really for his chilutai, for his mitzayra status. So that's why the Gemara is saying, the Bryce is saying he could only touch him after 37 days, which on day 38. Why? Because maybe you are a mitzayra. Again, but maybe not. But in case you are a mitzayra, comes out, well, let's first say the other way. If you're not a mitzayra, you have to do your first haircut only on day 7, which is for your naziris of tumah, which you're allowed to. And then, 30 days later, for your naziris of tahara, because you can't cut your hair during your naziris of tahara. So I'll take you to day 38. But in case you were mitzayra, guess what? Those 2 haircuts were for your tzaras. The Gemara shortly is going to tell us why can't it count for both, but it can't. It's going to count for your tzaras. Now, okay, so now we didn't even do anything for our naziris tumah yet, which we know for sure we are. We didn't do anything for our naziris tahara yet. So at the end of 7 days later, after that, you'll do the 3rd haircut, like a Nazir Tameh, who has to count 7 days, because the haircut of the Nazir Tameh will not count from the haircut that you did already. Gemara is going to explain why can't it count for that? It won't count from the haircut you did for Yitzaras. So day 38, which is day number 1, will count for the first day of the 7 days. On the 8th day, you'll start counting your naziris of Tahara, of 30 days. And the day 31, you'll cut your hair of your teklachas of Nazir of Tahara. And that's what the Brisa was saying. You're going to drink wine, Tamal HaMesim, after 74 days, which on day 75. Why after 74 days? Because we got up to day 37, as we had described for the tzaras. And then you have to count another 7 days from the 37, which takes you to what? To 44. And then you have to count another 30 days of 74. So on day 75 is when you're done, which is day 31. That's why it's to 75 days. That's case number 2. Case number 3 says the Gemara. What happens if he's tamei vadai? Okay, he's definitely tama. Umuchla vadai. Meaning we had said in the Mishnah, he was tamei safek and muchlat safek. And then we switched the variable of 2 different cases, whether the muchlat was safek and the tama was vadai, or the tama was safek and the muchlat was vadai. Now we're saying, tama vadai, umuchla vadai. No, he's a nazir who's definitely tamei and definitely mitzayra. So he could eat kachim after 8 days. And he's done with his nazirs after 44 days. Why is that? So Tais explains also the last one, the Amid Aleph, that okay, since he's definitely a mitzayra, so it comes out that day number 1 that he started his naziris, he's going to take a haircut again because you just got purified from your tzaras on this day number 1. Day number 7, he'll take a second haircut, which is how every mitzayra does. Day number 8, he'll bring his karbanas of mitzayra. On that day, he's already allowed to eat kachim because he's done with his mechusi kippurim of that of tzaras. As Tais explains, although it says la'achar ches is lav davka, it's not precise, it means day number 8 itself. And because he's tamei, he's going to count 8 days, counting day number 8 of chalute with that. Day number 7, he'll cut his hair. Day number 8, again the second 8, he's going to bring his karbanas of tama, and then he'll start counting his naziras of tahara, which are 30 days with day number 8, which day number 8, the second day number 8 is day number 1 of the naziras of tahara. And day 31, he'll cut his hair and he'll bring his karbanas of tahara. Oh, that's what it's saying, that he'll drink wine after 44 days, which is day 45, because you have 7 and 7 plus 30, which is the 44, which are going to take you to day 45 of your Naziris, if you're definitely a Tameh and definitely a Mitzayra. Now, a question that's bothering many people is the following question the Gemara brings. The students asked Rabbi Shloimy ben Yochi, Nazir tahar u'mitzayra. If you have someone that is not a Tameh Nazir, or a regular Tahar Nazir, but he also has tzaras, what's the halacha? Could he just do one haircut? But look on. And Shapsi had asked that many times. What are you doing? Just do push off like he was at, finish your naziris and finish your tzaras and do one haircut. You keep on telling me he has to take a haircut and then he has to start over the naziris of tahara. Why don't you just do one haircut for both of them? So Amalek says, no, you can't do that. You can't do one haircut for the tzaras and the naziris of tahara. Amalek, they said to him, Rebbe Favos, why? Amalek, he said to them, I'll tell you why. If either one was for the purposes of the growing of the hair, or or let's say both of them were for the purposes of removing the hair. You guys are saying very good that let one haircut be count for both, because they're both for the same purposes and utility. But achshav that now that Nazir lehavir, when the Nazir cuts his hair, the purpose is to remove the hair. Meaning of tahara. When he finishes naziris of tahara, the purpose is to take it off and not to have it back. Umitzayra, however, the purpose is legadil, is to grow the hair. In other words, like Tais says, the nazir, the purpose is to remove all hair, where he doesn't need any more hair to grow for any mitzvah purpose. But when the mitzayra cuts his hair the first time, the purpose is to have it regrow, that he could cut it a second time before he brings his karbanas on day number 8. So since their function is fundamentally different, you can't say the haircut of one will exempt the other one, because one's to grow and one's to remove. But says the Gemara, they asked, I understand that it can't count the naziris of tahara haircut with that of the mitzayra muchlit from day when he finishes his confirmed tzaras. But it should work for the days of his counting, which takes a slightly different gear. So, like it's not going to count towards the days of the counting. In other words, the second haircut the mitzayra does is also to remove. So why can't that work for his naziris of tahara? So V'amalahan, he said to them, no, it's still different. If both of these haircuts were done before the bloods of their kabbanas were sprayed, so you guys would be saying good, then they share the common characteristics. But the difference is by mitzayra, lifnei zrikas damim, the haircut of the mitzayra is before the bloods of his carbon are sprayed, like it says in the pasuk, on day 7 he cuts his hair. Goes to the mikveh, it's only on the next day that he actually does his carbon. So by mitzayra, the haircut's being done before the carbon is being its blood is being sprayed. Yet by a nazir la'achas rikaz damim, the haircut is after the carbon was already brought, after the blood is already sprayed, like the pasuk says. V'gilach hanazir pesach al-moed, he cuts his hair. V'lokach tza'rosh nizrei b'nosna alo ish asher tachas b'chashlamim. When he does his haircut, his carbon's already cooking on the pot. The blood's already been sprayed. So they don't share common characteristics, and therefore the haircuts cannot exempt one another. Okay, fine. They said, wait a second, I understand that, but I still have a question. I understand that it won't work that when you're a Nazir Tahar, that cannot go well with the same haircuts that you take as a Mitzayra. Because you told me that they're different, whether it be the first haircut, the second haircut, they're fundamentally different. But if let's say he's a Nazir Tameh who has to cut his hair, why can't that be the same haircut that he does by his haircut of his tzaras? Samalan, he said to them, if both of them would be before he goes to the mikveh, you'd be saying good, that they share the same thing, they're both done the same way. But the difference is, a Nazir Tameh, his haircut is after he went to the mikveh. Like the pasuk says, "V'gilach reitshe b'yem terasa, b'yem yigelchenu b'yem terasa," which Tay says it sounds like, what do you mean b'yem terasa? It means he really went to the mikvah, as that's how it's dashed into the free, and only then does he cut his hair. But mitzayra lefnei b'yis mayim. Mitzayra's haircut is before he goes to the mikvah, like it says in the pasuk, "V'yem shvi yigalech kol sa'aray." Day 7 he cuts his hair. V'rachatz es b'sora b'mayim b'tar, and then it says he goes to the mikvah. Okay, see the mikvah is very important when you get in mikvah. So it makes a difference if the haircut's going to work or not. Therefore, it's not considered the same thing. Now, although it says Amruloi, Taisus says it's like Loshan Achar, which in many Svachim, it's not. It doesn't. You don't say Boy Rav Dimi, so it's like a Loshan Achar. Which Amruloi, they said to him, Yafa Marta. Okay, I understand what you're saying. Shleitaloi lemeisifrei ulenzirusai. I understand why you're telling me that the haircut that the Nazir Tar does will not work for the Mitzayra's second haircut, when he finishes his counting for the Naziris. But, so it's a slightly different variation. It should work for the first haircut that the Mitzayra does, and when he's a Nazir Tameh. Those haircuts should be working in tandem. Why? Because they told him, when the Nazir Tameh cuts his hair, the purpose is to have it grow back that he could do in Nazir Zavtara. When the Mitzayra cuts his hair the first time, it said it should grow back that he could cut it a second time 7 days later. They're both the same thing. So why there can't you have them in the same haircut? Why do you have to do another haircut and another haircut? Samalame said to them, if Nazir Tahar V'hu Mitzayra, if a person's a Nazir Tahar and he's a Mitzayra, so that we know is not going to work. Why not? Because zeh legadol, we said by the Mitzayra, the purpose is to have it grow, and v'zel have it. By Nazir, we said the purpose is to remove it. Now, v'im Nazir tamei bu Mitzayra, and if the case that you're discussing regarding that is Nazir tamei and the Mitzayra, they're still different because zeh lefnei biyas mayim. By Mitzayra, his haircut is before he goes to the mikvah. V'zel la'achar biyas mayim, as we explained, but the case of the Nazir tamei, although, they're both legadol, they're both the purpose to grow the hair, but he's going after the mikvah, and therefore that's going to be considered fundamentally different. You're not going to have one haircut exempting the other. Now, so too, as the Gemara brings on the top of Samach Aleph and Aleph, Tana Reb Chia, he also says the same thing. He says, Zeh, a Mitzayra, his haircut is l'fnei b'yis mayim before it goes into the mikvah. But Zeh, the Nazir Tameh is la'achar b'yis mayim after it goes into the mikvah. And therefore, again, even though they're both to grow the hair, it's not going to work. And so too, Zeh, the Mitzayra, when he's doing his second haircut, is lefnei zrikas dam, his haircut is before the blood is sprayed. But then by Nazir Tahar, the reason why it's not going to work, even though they're both to remove the hair, is because his la'achas zrikas dam is after the blood was sprayed. That's the teglachas of Nazir Tahar. Therefore, they're not going to work one for the other. Now, the Mishnah had said, shat teglachas and nega b'chulu, because we said, you'll be able to cut your hair of tzaras during your naziris if it's definite. But if it's suffix, then we said you maybe can't do it, and therefore that's why you said you have to wait 30 days, 30 days, 30 days, 30 days until it's a total of 120. Now, regarding this haircut that we're doing, so says the Gemara the following question. Hani arba teglachis to come. These 4 haircuts that we mentioned in the Mishnah, we mentioned in the Brisa, Mishum mitzvah, is it a mitzvah? In other words, as Taisa explains the Gemara's question on the previous Amid, in other words, are all of these haircuts for the mitzvah, meaning that you need to have a razor even for the 3rd haircut, even if he's definitely tamei and definitely mitzaycha, which you need to have 4 haircuts. But the 3rd haircut is only for your naziras of tumah, which Taisa says, it says, Lafi Daiti, he says, this is not really going on the 4 haircuts of our Mishnah, which that's talking about when you were suffik muchlit, suffik tamei. Because in our Mishnah, that you don't have any haircut that you cannot be in doubt that maybe he's a muchlit or at least a Nazir Tahar. Now, by mitzaycha and a Nazir Tahar, that we know from Sukkim on the Gemara Daf Mem Aleph Mem Aleph that we need to have a razor. And Nazir Tameh, we also learn out from Nazir Tahar that it needs to have a razor. And that's actually how the Gemara is going to come out. Now, according to Rambam, the question of Rambam Chama, what it was asked on, was specifically a Nazir Tameh. And really, says Taisus, he could have just asked straight to the point, the haircut of a Nazir Tameh, does that need a razor or does it not need a razor? The reason why I picked all these 4 haircuts was simply because we were talking about in our sugya when you use a definite mitzvah and a definite tummy, which you require 4 haircuts. So we're asking, all these 4 haircuts, do they need a razor? But we know that a mitzvah muchlet, and we know that a nazatar needs a razor. That we already learned in Daf Yomi. And therefore you can't ask it on the 4 haircuts of our Mishnah, because our Mishnah, even haircut number 3, might be nazatar, not nazatami. So of course you're going to have to do it with a razor, just in case it's nazatar. We're saying when there's a definite mitzvah and a definite nazar tummy, then you for sure have to do the 4 haircuts. So haircut number 3 we know is for nazar tummy. That's really essentially what we're asking on. Does a nazar tummy require a mitzvah of a razor? Oh, says the Gemara, maybe the purpose is just to remove the tummy here, and however you get rid of it. Says the Gemara, Lamai nafkamina, what's the ramification? To get rid of it with a cream. As the Gemara explains, if you say there's a mitzvah of the hair cutting, then you can't just do it with a cream. But if you say that it's just to get rid of the hair, then even if you smear it with a cream, the same thing would also be. As Taisa explains, that you have to say that he cut some of the hairs with a scissor or with a razor. Because if you would really smear a cream on the whole head, then the hair is not going to grow back, as the Gemara says about becoming the pevav, which they would use these creams that would totally remove the hair. And then you're not going to be able to do the teglachas of tahara, which you have to do when you finish in naziris, you have to be able to cut off the hair. And so to says really the Gemara could have just asked the question in a more simple way, if you cut off the hair with scissors, because anyways Tais says that you're using the cream, you really have to use some scissors anyway. The question is, do you have to use a razor? Is the mitzvah of the razor cutting like you have by naziris of ta'aga by mitzayra? Or no, just don't have to have the hair, and you could use scissors, you could use some type of cream, but that says the Gemara, what's the halacha by the nazar tummy? So on that, Amarava says Tashamat Migaraya from the Bryce. The Bryce says Magalech Arba Teglachias. Says you cut 4 haircuts when you're a muchlet vaday and a tame vaday and you were nazar tar, meaning you were nazar. So Isa Gedai, if you think to say that Mishum Mivuri Serotum, the whole halacha is just to remove the tummy here, then there should be enough even with 3 haircuts. What do you need 4 haircuts for? Shmamina, what you can infer from that is Mishum Mitzvah, Shmamina. What? But now first, Taisus says his girsa first is Tashema. Right from the Bryce was, it just says Magalech Arba Teglachias. It says you cut 4 haircuts. Says the Gemara, and that's all Taisus has in his girsa, Shmamina Mishum Mitzvah, Shmamina. Which he says someone explained that the diik is from the fact that you're including all the 4 haircuts together as one, so therefore you're comparing them, and therefore that means to say they all have to have a razor, even the 3rd one, which is for the suffix of Nazar Tameh, just like the other 3 haircuts we know for sure, you have to have a razor, so to that of Nazar Tameh. That's one pshat, but that's according to Taisa's girsa. Problem is, Taisa says some Sfarim have a girsa which we have, that says, oh, if you think to say the purpose is to remove the tummy hairs, then even with 3 haircuts should be enough. And that says Taisa that, well, that's difficult to us. What are you bringing? What do you mean? All the haircuts, there's a suffix if it's a mitzayra or nazatar, and that's even by the 3rd one. What's that proving regarding when you know for sure that it's for the nazar tameh, if it requires a razor or not? Says Taisus, maybe you could say that even though the 3rd haircut you could be in doubt, maybe it's the haircut of a nazatar, which you're telling me usually requires a razor, but still, if the taglachas of Tumah did not require a razor, because of the suffix of Nazar Tar, I wouldn't require you to do it with a razor, because you're anyways not drinking wine and being Matam Mesim until you do your next haircut 30 days after that, which you're anyways going to do for Nazir Daf, and then you can use a razor. So that's the Gemara's Raya, that if Teglachas of Tumah didn't require a razor, then you wouldn't have it by the 3rd one, obviously that the Naziras of Tumah also requires a razor. Hanloch Shnei Nazirim, we shall return to the 8th parak in Mesechtes, Nazir parak Shnei Nazirim, with Siyat Dishmai. Thank you to any time for hosting us.